13 Questions by Man Transcending. Manhood in the Digital Age. And that was Cretched of ODBM. Or Big Dumb Mouth. Bill, you there?
Yeah.
Woo-wee. That's cool. I didn't realize until earlier on that this was going to be the other half of ODBYM. What am I saying? OBDYM. I'm adding letters.
It's like
go see your OBDYM.
Yeah. OBD gynecology or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, that was I'm a big fan of OBDM podcast. They do a good job over there. I've been following their work for years now, and just Midnight Mike's been a guest on the show. He's super
It's a great
nice
podcast.
guy.
Check it out.
And and wanted to get Cretched on. I mean, why not? I mean, we're just a couple of podcasts, just hanging out.
Just hanging out.
It's fun. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I was looking forward to that for a few weeks, ever since I booked it. So I had a good time with this. And so that's how I came across Cretched.
Yeah. How long have you been listening to ODBYM there? OPDM. It's locked in my mind.
I found them like shortly after Grammarica. So I'm going to say 5 years maybe. And it's been off and on because I'll catch them live on YouTube. I don't really use a pod player too much. I'll catch a lot of the shows live, and it's a great time. And then it's a call-in show too, which is really fun. I have yet to call into that one, but maybe I'll do that soon. But yeah, I love call-in shows. Those are a lot of fun, especially if you've never called in before and it's your first time. You get all nervous and excited and stuff. At least I did with Chuck's show, Chuck Ocelli, past guest.
Sounds like you enjoyed the experience.
Yeah. So I mean, I just really enjoyed OBDM, and I enjoyed Cretched's sense of humor. We talked about that a little bit in the interview, and good times. I did have a little bit of internet trouble there at the beginning in question one. So, listener, I do apologize for that, and apologize to Cretched.
No, normal technical what am I trying to say? Technical glitches.
Internet gremlin. Yeah.
Gremlin, yeah. But it's completely normal. It was fun being on with a regular podcaster who is used to the pleasantries of, oh, my batteries are dead. Oh, my software's not working. Where's my audio?
Yeah, he's a professional, that's for sure.
That's right.
Nice to be able to cut right to the chase, when we're you get what I'm saying. So everybody knows the game.
Right? I think you guys are going to enjoy this one. Bill, do you happen to have a gratitude?
I do, and I'm really excited to share it because I've never talked about it before on the show.
Do tell.
I'm just going to tell it without a jingle.
I forgot the jingle. I even had my long pause there before was even for me to open up the folder so you didn't hear me clicking. Gratitude, 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 oh gratitude. Gratitude, 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 oh gratitude.
All right, so yeah, my gratitude is there's a little story behind it, because I gotta kind of explain what it is. I had a biofield tuning session earlier this week. It's not the first time I've had one of these sessions done. I've been going to the same practitioner for about 2 years now. She's a great lady. Found her through Eileen McCusack's website. And what biofield tuning is, it uses tuning forks, so it is a sound therapy, and practitioner is able to locate and reintegrate locate energy within your field that is not in harmony, and then she's able to reintegrate it back into your system. So if you think of uh, your body as a record, and the present moment is your physical body, right? And then as the needle moves out, you're moving backwards in time towards your birth. So at the edge of this about 6 foot field is, from what I've read, um, the edge of this field is your gestation and your birth. So it provides a record of your time, or of your lifetime. And everybody has trauma, and when the trauma occurs, and if it's not processed in a healthy way at that time, it becomes stagnant and it gets stuck out in your biofield. And what the practitioner does is she uses tuning forks and some other things, and she was able to feel where the energy is and kind of click and drag it back into your system. So she'll kind of comb it over. It's really interesting to watch, and you can feel all this. At least I can feel all this when it's going on. It affects different areas, different chakras. My heart chakra was something that was worked on this past time. It was also a big thing that was worked on the first time I went, and that was just something intuitive that I knew before I even went. Um, but yeah, I went again this past week. It had been a while. I forgot about how beneficial and efficacious it is to me, anyway. Not a sponsor, but it's definitely something that I find benefit in, and that I'm grateful for, because it helps me. And not only, if you want to get really, I don't know, woo woo into it, it not only helps you, but this also affects what she calls your ancestral river. So when you heal trauma, it's not only affecting you in a positive way, it's affecting uh, your ancestors, or even your parents, if that trauma involved your parent at some point. So it's healing. If you like healing and you like getting rid of trauma and growing and new experiences, if you've never done that before, go check it out if you can find a practitioner in an area near you. So yeah, dude, that's my gratitude.
I like it.
Yeah, yeah, it's not that expensive either. I think it's $70 a session, and it's an hour and a half. First one might be a little bit longer, but yeah, I encourage
Well, that's good. I'm
anyone
glad you're finding
to do that.
benefit from that. I know a lot of people automatically, think woo woo, but I'm
Hmm.
always interested in the fact that when I turn my Wi-Fi off, or more conversely, I can tell when my Wi-Fi has tripped off if there's a power surge and when it hasn't, because it's just a sense. You can feel it.
Yeah,
And, there's studies done on, sleeping and different things. So, vibrations are very important and very impactful in ways that we don't really understand. So anytime somebody's working with vibration, even if it's with intent or with voice, I'm fascinated, because there's, you know, uh, great anecdotal evidence and science showing that, frequency is the base of many, if not all, of reality.
yeah, it is. It's really fun to learn about. We talked about learning about things in the interview part too.
Hmm.
There's a wide body of knowledge yet to be discovered with a lot of these. Uh, I don't know, alternate forms of healing, I guess. Like she was saying that she got a biofeedback machine, which will be able to tell you in real time how your body is reacting to you know the method that she's using. So I'm really looking forward to that. But yeah, enough about biofield tuning. Did you have a gratitude?
I do. And it's about something I got really excited about. We're going to be bringing somebody in who's hired to optimize warehouses, create systems for, inventory and just the entire thing, and creating a system that's going to be efficient, and scalable. And that really excites me because every company I've worked for has either not had that order and structure, or it's been already baked in for eternity. And I'm really excited about just seeing that entire process of, how one goes for optimizing systems for our use in our building. And that got me really, really excited. And just having that excitement about learning about, efficient systems in ways, very much in the way that our guest, was speaking tonight about like ordering and numbering and, categorizing and carrying notebooks and structuring things. And it's, I don't know, it really, really excites me. And just having that excitement about really just, ordering things different, you know, structure, systems. I don't know. It's a great feeling to be able to have that, because those are the kinds of feelings and the kinds of thoughts and on the subjects that just kind of cut through anything else that's going on in your life. My mind can really grasp onto that learning of that type of new concept. So yeah, I really appreciate having that type of learning and excitement in my life.
Well, and you're a fan of efficiency too, right?
Incredibly.
So that makes perfect sense. Yeah, dude.
I get super, super angry if I have to do something twice. There's nothing more than I hate than doing the same thing more than once. So yeah, I'm just naturally try to be super efficient.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah. Other than that, guys, and I
Contact
suppose
the
we could
show
talk about the yeah, as I was going to say, we've got the socials.
if you want us to stick around, support us.
Send us a message, just say hello, we're listening. That'd be great too. Yeah, we got Discord, Telegram, Gab.
Seriously, send us a message. Talk to
Gmail.
us. If you have
Yeah.
a suggestion of somebody for the show, if you have a question or an idea, we've added questions. I'm excited about that. Make me as excited as I am about getting a new question for the show. And reach out. Tell us how we're doing. I don't want to say we live in a vacuum, because we don't completely. We're on the Discords, but let us know what you think. Let us know what you like. Just reach out, be part of the show, share the wisdom. Find people that you want to hear, and we'll make that happen, because chances are, if you want to hear them, me, Bill, and somebody else does too.
Yeah, we talked about the open source and
Absolutely.
getting content, submissions from listeners from their role models in the interview too.
Absolutely. We've done it in the past, have no problem doing it again. If you have any questions about recording, hit us up, 13questionspodcast@gmail.com. Find us in the show notes there. Head on over to the website. Go to the Discords. Reach out, and I will help you through it. We'll get you going. We'll do the editing on our end. Essentially, if you have an iPhone, we can make this work. We can set up your environment so that you can do a recording. And honestly, those are the greatest. When you know the person and you're in a personal environment with them, I mean, even if you don't send it in, why not do it? Pass it to your grandkids. Put it in, I don't know. It just seems like a wonderful little gift to save for eternity. Something that 40 years down the line, my child can open it up and get brand new perspectives on life about dad or about grandpa. And I don't know, get creative with the questions.
Yeah, you could store it on a USB drive and then put it in a lockbox or a time capsule or something. I don't know. I mean, it's too much. But yeah, definitely send us your recordings, your suggestions. Contact the show, and we are value for value. So if this episode or another episode really spoke to you, or that you really enjoyed, and you'd like to give us like $2 or $5, like, we do have a one-time donation option on the website.
It's whatever you find value from.
Numbers up to you.
Exactly.
There's
And
Or-
we We only ask because, this is it's a passion project. It's a project. It costs money. It takes up a good deal of Bill and ours time, and no complaints. But if you love what we do and you want us to keep doing more and get better at what we're doing and increase the quality, please support the show. I think that's going to be coming up. We were able to get through a donation from past guest Andreas Lopez. We got a mixer arrived today to get you set up on. So I'm super excited about getting you the proper cables so that we can start getting your audio recorded higher end on your end, give you a little more control over your mute. Got dreams of getting you a second recorder over there. We can jump up the editing, recording, start cutting out more background sound. Ultimately, bring you guys a better listening experience. So
yeah, I wanted to. I was struggling with my gratitude because I wanted to bring up Andreas donated the mixer. It's just so many things to be grateful for. I had to pick one, but yeah, I got the mixer today actually, and I found an old printer cable that worked to connect it to the back of my computer to the mixer, but then my mic is XLR to USB, and there's no USB in the mixer.
I thought I sent
I
you
gotta
an
buy.
XLR cable when I sent the mic to you originally.
You might have. I just moved a bunch of stuff, and I haven't seen it, but I can go back.
Either way, it's a
through
very
some
standard
boxes.
cable. And
Yeah.
look, if anybody out there is looking to become a podcaster, it's a relatively inexpensive mixer. I want to say they're like 75, 80 bucks if they're in stock somewhere. It's a Xenix 302 USB. I've got a really fancy Xenix. What is it? It's a Q1202 USB. And I've got that thing piped through this little tiny mixer. Interfaces perfectly with my computer, does everything I need to do for recording guests, combining them together, mix minusing basically. And I love it. And then I pipe my big stuff through this thing. So if you're an inspiring podcaster out there, I highly recommend that mixer. Good quality piece of hardware. Behringer kicks butt.
Yeah, I can't wait to start using it. I'm just sitting here looking at it. Yeah.
And not to go too geek, but Cretched tonight, I was very happy to see that we were wearing the same set of headphones. Made me feel like little special inside.
Little inside club.
Exactly. Listen, that inside club includes Kevin Smith. I saw him on the set of the new Clerks movie when he was behind the scenes, and I'm like, that's my headphones. Me and Kevin Smith were bros.
Clerks 2?
Actually,
is there a newer one?
No. What it was I forget the name of the documentary, but it was Magnus Dopus or something like that. But it was after Kevin Smith had his heart attack, he did a documentary of him making his movie behind the scenes. It's an amazing documentary.
Huh.
Also a really good movie. His last one that he did.
Yeah, I just
watched
Comic-Con. Clerks. I watched that a lot. I watched Clerks again not too long ago. I don't know, just out of the blue.
Definitive movie.
It is. It is. So yeah, guys, if you like what you hear, support the show, share the show. If anything else, share it. Or if nothing else, share it. And yeah, I think this is a good one. You guys will enjoy it.
We'll see you guys later. Enjoy the show.
All right, cool. Let's get started then. Question number 1. What was the best advice ever given to you? Would you modify it at all today?
So this one, I struggled with this question. Trying to think of what was the one best piece of advice, and I don't have one, so it's not going to help. What I've got is a whole bunch of little nuggets that are like the potential contenders for the best advice I've ever gotten. And I want to kind of go through those and get reactions, and some are pithy and some are actual legit advice, but I don't have like one overall kind of lifestyle mantra that was given to me where it's like, I'm living by this creed in order to be a better person sort of thing. So I hope that's okay with you guys.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So first piece of advice that I would categorize under the best advice I've ever gotten is never pay only the minimum on your credit card. And then related to that is don't buy more than you can afford. I learned that one real early on the hard way. As a 18-year-old, you get yourself a credit card when you go off to college, and I racked up some bills on that one and had to dutifully, pay them down. And learned real early that is not a way to go through life. It just doesn't work out financially.
Yeah, I my internet cut out, but definitely credit card debt sucks, man. Yeah.
Well, you can go back and pull the rest from that, I suppose. So yeah, that one is one that's kind of stuck in my mind. Is you get your credit card bill, it says you owe $13. Don't pay that. Pay off the balance every time. It's the only way to really make it work, and done that for 30 some years now.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's a good way to build up your credit too, is just make sure that it's paid off, and then it ends up helping you like tremendously. I didn't know that until relatively recently. I mean, I have always had a credit card. I just never used it. I was scared to, but once I made the switch or whatever and started using it full time, definitely helped with the old credit score, which is nice if you're in the housing market at this time. But
yeah, absolutely
not.
So then the next one on my list is somewhat related. Never buy a brand new car. Learned that one early on. Always buy a used car. Let someone else get the 30% depreciation, and then you buy it and save money on the other end. So that's held true. Every car I've ever owned has been a used car, and also I maintain them and hang on to them for a very, very, very long time. My truck right now is be 14 years old this year. So
nice.
And that's the one I had the longest. I had a Nissan. I had that one for almost 20 years. My joke on that one was my Nissan can vote. So. But yeah, just maintain them and drive them, and they're fine. So. Let's see. Next on my list of best advice, always use your handbrake when parking a car. I don't care how flat of an area you think you're parking on. The parking gear was not made to hold the weight of your car on a hill. If you have a manual transmission, you just drop it into gear. That mechanism was also not meant to hold the weight of your car from rolling. So use your handbrake, use your parking brake, use your e-brake, whatever you want to call it. Always, every single time. And it amazes me how many people have never used that pedal or that handle, or that now it's a button on cars. And you still see stories of those cracking loose and rolling down a hillside. So,
is that something that came like from is there a story behind that, or
no? That's just like when I was learning to drive, it was like, just when you park, you use this. And I lived in San Francisco for several years, and it was super helpful because you get in, you park there and you pull your e-brake and you park wherever you want. When I lived in Seattle, I lived in Seattle for a while too. You had to sometimes use your e-brake starting on from stop signs and red lights and things. So it was a challenge, but no, it's just one of those things. So no, I do not have a good story with that. I would like to tell the
that's okay.
long drawn out story of the car that cracked loose and rolled down a hill and crossed a major intersection and killed 6 people. And it didn't happen.
Exactly. Let me see. And that's because you used your handbrake.
Because I use my handbrake every time. Next best piece of advice is always use an Oxford comma when listing more than 2 articles. I don't care. Maybe it's old school, but that's how I learned. That's what Strunk and White says. So that's how I write. Use the Oxford comma. Let me see. This one's a little more kind of general. The way it was given to me was very specific, but is general in life approach, I suppose. So when I was learning, I want to say it was trigonometry. It may have been algebra. I don't recall. When I was learning that, and so my dad was kind of teaching me algebra. I think it was algebra. And he said, step 1 is you write down what you know. So when you're trying to solve math problems. You write down what you know, so you know what your variables are. You know how your equation is going to build out. But write down what you know. But that carries over into so many other things in the sense where, like I said, I'm a very systems-based person. So I take notes on things. I want to track stuff. I want to make lists. I want to set up reminders. I want to do all these things. I want to keep track of what I know is true, what I know is about any scenario. It's work-related, personal relationship, whatever, family stuff. I want to write stuff down so I know what's happening when on a calendar, or I want to know what needs to be done, because that's one less thing I have to try to remember, because it's invariable. It's like going to the grocery store. And you're like, I need 5 things. And you get there and you get 1, 2, 3. And you're like, shit, what was 4 and 5? And you're kind of thinking it might be this one, but hey, write it down. So that carries over to so many things in life. I just find that incredibly helpful. So if there's like one kind of generic thing, I would say it may be that, because it applies to a lot of different scenarios, but it's still kind of one of those little pieces of advice. Then I added here at the end, if I could give a piece of advice, because as I'm thinking about advice, I thought, what would be some good advice to give people? I want to flip this question around. So if I'm going to give advice to anybody, if I could get on the megaphone of the world and give everyone advice, here it is. Get off your damn phone. I don't care what you're looking at. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care who you're talking to or what you're, any of that. It doesn't matter right now. Put it away. Do what you're supposed to be doing. Look at it later. We didn't have these things 10 years ago. Well, I guess we did. We didn't have these things 15 years ago. Life got along just fine without it. Instagram can wait. So I see that too much.
I agree 100%. And you've also preempted one of our bonus questions, so we can check that off the list too.
All right. So that's my list of little pieces of advice. Like I said, I started coming up with my list of ones that could be potential contenders, and then I thought I'm just going to run with all of them. So
awesome.
No, I like your answer there. Duncan Trussell kind of gave the flip side of that answer, where he said that, you always want to carry a net with you, but what he meant by a net was carrying notebooks, so that any ideas that come out of your mind, you can capture them. And the same thing, when you capture those things that you need to do, you want to make sure that you put them into a system so that they get implemented and not, fall into the wayside.
So I wanted to grab this thing. So here is my shitty Mead memo notebook. I have a stack of these. I chew through these things like there's no tomorrow. There's a couple of things on that list, which I've already crossed off. I usually have one of these. So yeah, we have phones, which used to be PDAs. We have laptops and all these things around us all the time. I still write stuff down with a pen and paper in my crappy little memo notebook.
Look, you call it a crappy little memo notebook, but that, in my mind, is the greatest piece of technology that we've ever had. It is the ability to store, recall, categorize, hold forever information, and be able to, show it to somebody in an exact form instead of a thought that you perceive. I don't know. I'm fascinated by notes and paper and writing.
Yeah, and I've had people say, "Why don't you get a nice one?" I've had ones given to me as gifts. I have them over there, the leather bound ones, or the little field notes or whatever. It's like, nope, this little piece of crap that falls apart. You can see it's all worn. It's about halfway through. You get a pack of these for like $3 and you chew through them. Because I don't feel bad if I tear a page off of this or I need to use it for something else. It's just, if I lose it, I don't care. And to your point about, paper and notebooks being like the greatest technology, I would say, well, someone did improve on that. A couple of ladies out of Minnesota, when they came up with the Post-it notes, because those are all over the place. In fact, I just cleaned them off the front of my computer at work. I had them kind of all the way across the bottom of the monitor for various odds and ends. And I was looking, I was like, this one's from 3 years ago. And I threw it out. So yeah, it's super helpful stuff.
That's awesome. I just got a pocket calendar in the mail from charity asking for money, right? Their little free gift thing. So, and I was thinking to myself, who would ever use that? But no, I see.
I special order white Post-it notes.
The ability, and the other thing is, speaking of, I'm thinking about this. I have whole systems for this stuff. So I've done this. I don't know if you guys have ever done this. So I'll think of a note. I'll write down on my Post-it notes. These then, have you ever seen this? These then fit perfectly inside the notebook. And that way your notebook goes with you and you still have your notes. So look at that. Been doing that stuff for years. So yeah, speaking of writing implements, somewhere I have the same pen I had all the way through high school. So there's a 35-year-old pen floating around here somewhere.
Is it hand carved too?
No, it's some piece of crap Pentel, but now it's just like out of just pride to hang on to it. So, yeah.
Awesome.
So I noticed when the second part of this question says, would I modify any of these? And I would just say across the board, no. These are all still 100% valid as the day I learned them.
Good. That means that they're solid pieces of advice, I suppose.
I don't know. I think any one of these, I mean, if you were to kick these back 50 years, they would probably be just as valid. I mean, the credit card one, maybe not, but you'd have charge cards. But charge cards were different than credit cards. Cards wanted you to pay off the balance every month. Whereas credit cards, you can let stuff float because they make more money that way. So, but the rest of it's still 100% valid.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Moving on to question number 2. What do you choose to ignore?
So this one was easy. Because I have such a pat answer for it. I'll explain it and then I'll give you the pat answer. So what do I choose to ignore? I ignore social media. I don't care. I don't have Facebook. I don't have Twitter. I don't have Instagram, any of that stuff. I have a work-related LinkedIn account, but I don't know if you guys have used LinkedIn recently. Since Microsoft bought it, it's become far, far worse and less useful because they've tried to make it like Facebook for work. So there's all this random crap and noise. So the signal to noise ratio on that is terrible. I still just use it as kind of like an online resume. Is that really a valid way to think of it?
Yeah. It's networking and resume. It's exactly that.
Yeah. And it's frustrating to see what's happened to it, but that's like my only bit of social media. I guess you could consider stuff we do with OBDM and Discord and stuff like that. Maybe that's related, but I don't see that as the same sort of thing because that's like such an insular community. Those don't. They're very focused and they're small. So yeah, I mean, so what do I ignore? I ignore social media. Second part of that, I don't watch TV. I don't have TV service. I haven't had TV service for over 10 years. I don't read the newspaper. Do newspapers even still exist? I know A, they keep consolidating and disappearing, and B, they're getting worse too. And I don't listen to the radio. So I just kind of ignore all that stuff. And it's great because if something is super important, it'll come to your attention eventually, but you're not like, going from story of the moment to story of the moment, like constantly throughout the day. You're not getting that dopamine hit of scrolling through social media or Facebook or any of that stuff. And I made a note here. There's too many stories and too many people that frankly I'm blissfully ignorant of. So I'll see someone talking about, oh, did you see what this person said to that person? I was like, first of all, I don't know who either of these two people are, nor do I know what they're talking about. And I think that's great because I don't care. So I'm glad that I can be willfully ignorant of things like that. So I figure if something's important enough, if the media makes a big enough deal about something, it's going to kind of like crack that shell and actually come to my attention. But for the most part, all those stories we're talking about are just kind of like, they're just noise and they're gone within 2 or 3 days and then they're on to something else. So why spend your energies focusing on this thing that only exists for a very short period of time? And then there's something else coming along. So, why waste your time? There's better things to do. So yeah, I just ignore all that stuff. And I did say I have a pat answer for this. And this is what I tell people when they ask about it. I say, I stay off the face bags, the tweeters, the Instacams, the snip chimps, and the tickety talks. I don't watch TV. I don't read the newspaper, and I sleep like a baby at night because I don't worry about any of that crap. It's great. So,
amen. Yeah, I stopped following the news cycle pretty quickly after the election, and so nowadays I'm pretty quote unquote out of touch, but much happier for it for sure. And if something, like you said, like if something does come up, I'll hear about it on a podcast I listen to, like OBDM or pick one, right?
Yeah, I mean, if it's something that's important enough, and if enough people are making a big deal about something, if it's been around for more than 2 or 3 days, you'll hear about it, and then maybe it's something worth paying attention to. But for the most part, all that stuff it's fleeting and it disappears, and they're on to something else.
Don't get stressed out over the state of North Korea rattling its sabers.
It's silly the sort of things that will I mean, you go to CNN's homepage, go to Fox News' homepage, and they're all shouting at you to pay attention to this, that, or the other thing. And I like looking at it and going, I don't know what half the stuff is about this, which is great.
Yeah, I think if more people paid attention to what was more, tangential to them, more in front of them. Like sometimes I have to tell my dog to mind her own business if she's trying to go after a squirrel or a dog or something. Maybe I need to tell that to people too. I don't know.
Well, and that goes back to my comment about, get off your phone. Because a lot of what people are doing is there is this dopamine hit of, I need to see something may have happened, this fear of missing out. Something happened in the intervening 20 minutes since the last time I looked at my phone. I need to be up to date. So I know at all times what everybody I potentially know is doing. And that's absolutely not, I don't think that's a good way to go through life, frankly.
No, now everybody, instead of contributing to society and pushing us forward, it's turned into just consumers, and not even consumers of even goods. It's just information. It's weird.
Would you even, consumers of information is interesting because I don't know if they're consuming. It's just kind of washing over them.
Yeah.
Just to consume, you would think they'd be absorbing and doing something with it, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird, and it changes you too. It modifies your brain. It gets you into, heightened states of anxiety, hormone changes. It's it's really interesting how it is molding the direction of our society at the moment.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking here. I had a note on this on my page of notes on all the stuff I wrote down. And I want to make sure it's not part of another answer. Let's see here. Yes, it is. So I won't bring that up yet. It's for another answer, but it's related.
All right. Question number 3 then. What book has been most influential in your life and why?
This one's a challenge because I don't have a single book that's like, oh my gosh, I read this when I was 16 and this has stuck with me, for life. I mean, I've got books behind me here. I used to have walls of books, but most of them were just kind of crummy adventure novels sort of thing. I still do try to generally read a book a week. Though most of those are just like, and I hate to phrase it this way because they're fun, but like mindless adventure novels of things. Right now I'm just cranking through like Clive Cussler books. They're just easy. You can get through them in a couple of days sort of thing. And they're just fun to read. But that's not something you're going to say like, oh, you've got to read this Clive Cussler book. Because in this one, the guys go and fight smugglers who are trying to find artifacts. They all are smugglers trying to find artifacts. It's like every book is that. So I made a list of a couple of books that I would say have been influential in my life. Again, probably not like the most, but ones that certainly helped shape my life and ethos. The first off there, I'm going to say the Bible. I'm going to say the New International Version of the Bible, and not so much because it shaped my life as much as it shaped society's, kind of life. It shapes society. So much what we do is based in the Judeo-Christian tradition. I don't care what people say. That's the functional basis of Western society. That's an important book. Take that for what you will. On a more personal level, and me as well. I grew up in, Protestant church, so it's the same. I don't know if you guys have had this one come up yet, but the Boy Scout Handbook, and I went to an older version of it, but the Boy Scout Handbook, because it shaped not just my childhood and a lot of what I did as a kid, but it shaped my dad's childhood. So thus it shaped kind of what he was doing as he was raising his kids, but it also shaped my love for camping and woodcraft and just nature and things like that. So that's an important one. It's not one that I sit down and read, but it's just because going through that, using that book and going through that program, which was such a big part of my life for so many years, that's one I can't skip that.
No, I'm on board with you. As far as I'm concerned, it's a book that everybody should have. It's basic survival skills that everybody needs to know.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I probably have it around here somewhere as a well-worn, in terrible shape, beat up one that I had to put packing tape on to hold it back together and all this stuff. But, yeah, I mean, it's just general. It's just full of general good information. I don't know what the current ones are like. I can't speak to that, but the one I used as a kid was certainly super useful and would be just chock full of good info to have.
Well, it's great. If you don't think you're an outdoorsy person, you can pick up this book, read it, and go camping.
And in a lot of cases, I think you use it as a reference manual, not to like read from front to back, cover to cover sort of thing. But this one came out of a conversation with somebody at work the other day. So I pull into the parking lot at work, go into the building. This guy says, "Have you ever read Dave Ramsey?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Have you read Dave Ramsey's books?" I was like, "Well, yeah." He says, "You seem like a Dave Ramsey sort of person." I'm like, "Where's this coming from?" He says, "Well, he was on the radio talking about something. He heard it, and he thought." So the person who came to mind of all the people this person knows, it was like, "Yeah, it's Cretched. He's clearly going to be a Dave Ramsey person." And I said, "Yeah, actually, I have." So this was in the last week or two. I said, "I'm going to make a note." I wrote it down. "I'm going to make a note about this. So I'm going to list Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University, because that, I mentioned the credit card thing, and this was years before, but the Dave Ramsey thing helped me figure out general structure for debt and how to manage larger expenses and things like that, which has been super useful to have." And I would say I would list that one because it's definitely shaped or formulated my like financial parsimoniousness, where I'm just like, I am a cheapskate on a lot of stuff. On some things I'm not, but other things I will eminently a cheapskate. My 14-year-old truck, because why do I need to replace that? It runs fine. I don't need to do anything about it. I mentioned the not hatred, but the lack of enthusiasm for phones. So I have an iPhone, but it's, I think, 6 years old. They keep coming out with these new ones, and I look at them and go, nothing on there on these new ones does anything that's of any interest to me. So why bother with that? So that's an important book to me.
Yeah, it's a great financial advice if you're going to take it from anybody. And I don't think we've had the Boy Scout handbook come up before, but I admire that because it's something I wish I would have done when I was
You can
younger.
go get a copy. And I have one more I'm going to throw in here, and this one's more generic because I couldn't remember which one, but it's a generically Dave Barry's books on humor, his like humor columns, and his books on humorous topics. And I'm going to say those were important to me because they cracked me up. They helped me be a better writer. In fact, in high school, I wrote a report on something or other, but wrote it like kind of like Dave Barry would write a column. And I want to say it was government class, maybe civics, something. My teacher suggested, and I sent a copy of this report to Dave Barry, and he sent me a postcard back. And I still have that somewhere, laminated, stuck it somewhere. I still have it. It says, "You're a deranged young man. This is excellent." I thought, oh, good. I don't know if he's talking about my writing is excellent or the fact that I'm deranged, but I'm going to save that. So, so generically, Dave Barry's books are fantastic for helping you learn how to write better, but also to learn in a humorous style, write in a humor style, and learn to be a better humor writer, and how to manage and manipulate humor.
And he's a stand-up? Is he a stand-up comedian, or is he just...
Oh man, so that's disappointing. I thought you guys would know. Dave Barry, for like 30 some years, he was a columnist for the Miami Herald, and he won a Pulitzer Prize in the late 80s for his humor column. And he just writes kind of humorous slice of life things, but some of them are just like gut bustingly hilarious as he's writing about the most inane little things. But the way he writes is just great. So yeah, Dave Barry. I think he's retired now, but any number of books. He probably has 30 books out there. The nice thing is they're also really, really slim, so you can just kind of get through them.
That's definitely something I want to check out then. All right, moving on to question number 4. What rule do you have for yourself that you never break, and why do you think it's important?
This one's probably going to burn a lot of bridges. I was trying to think of a better one, but I think this one is something that that is probably a way I have structured my life in, I don't know, the last 20 some years or so, maybe longer than that, but definitely in the last 20. And maybe it's the way I was raised. Cause if I think about the way my dad was growing up, not him growing up, but me growing up, the way my dad was, maybe this is a reflection of that. But so the rule that I have is showing emotion is a sign of weakness, that it is your role in life to be stoic. And then on top of that, no one's going to help you through life. That's up to you to do it. Buck up, do it yourself. And if you fail, it's your fault. And I think that's true through and through. And I'll elaborate on that. I flunked out of college twice. I flunked out of community college. I had, that's the thing. When you graduate from high school, you go to college. All right, I'm going to college. Look at me. I flunked right out. That's my screw up. I had to figure out what to do after that. I eventually did go back to college and finished. But I went back on my terms. And I changed my major. I'm going to be pre-med. I'm going to be a doctor. Don't do any of that stuff. That's, coming to you from the IT manager in me. But, I was like, I'm going to be a teacher. I like teaching. I like talking to people. I'm going to be a teacher. Well, that doesn't pay very well. Screw that. I looked at my hobby. I was building, putting together LAN parties and building computers and stuff. I was like, I'm going in IT. That's more interesting. So, and to that end, it's completely up to you. Take classes at the local community college. Now you can take them online, take online classes, take them out of your own pocket if you need to, save up for them. Local trade schools, that stuff is fantastic as resources. Don't complain about your shitty job or your shitty salary. Fix it. Do it yourself. Go get a book from Half Price Books for $6 and learn something. And then, earn certifications on those things. And that's how you advance in life. And no one's going to do that for you. No one is going to spoon feed you or put that together. That is completely on you. So if you are whining and crying about your station in life, that's your fault. And like I said, I'm going to burn a lot of bridges with that one, but that's how I kind of was raised. And that's how I've lived my life. And, for better, for worse, that's my rule that I have. And I don't break that rule.
Yeah, well, it sounds like just a little bit of tough love. I mean, something that my dad used to say to me when I was growing up was, oh, no, I forgot it.
That's terrible advice.
I know. What were you were just saying something about, people are in the situations that they find themselves in because of the decisions that they've made in their life. So that's kind of goes along with, no one's going to help you, I mean, when we're talking about it in this light, and take responsibility for where you're at, and don't try to look for a handout, right?
Yeah. I mean, probably 10 plus years ago, I straight up, I was out of work. I lost my job. I did not work for almost 2 years. And that was on me. I could have stuck around at that company or whatever. There was options out there, but I was like, this is an opportunity to improve my station in life. And, I would, probably that, and then changing jobs and getting that whole process. I am still, and if you just look at it from a straight numbers perspective, that's on me. That's my fault, because I am still now 10 plus years later, still not making the salary I was making before then. Now, is that a measurement of success? No, but it is a measurement of at least how, what you're doing in life. Now, am I happier now than I was then? Absolutely. Would I trade my last, 10 years of life experience for sticking around in the executive position and keeping a better job? No, not at all. Having the money would be great, but that's not the end all be all of life. So that was a tough spot to be in, and but that's completely on me. I don't blame anybody else. I don't complain about how I was given a raw deal or anything. That's my fault. I have to fix that. And like I said, it's been 10 plus years, and I'm still kind of working my way back to where I was, at least from a financial perspective. So.
Yeah, and I also like that you brought up stoicism. That's something that's helped me a lot before in the recent past. I've talked about it on the show before, so that makes me happy when anybody mentions that.
Yeah, it's something that, I mean, it was a movement for a while, just kind of like to make that kind of like the philosophy around which you base your life, and it's not. I don't think it's something that a lot of people are. I mean, I don't know if it's, or maybe there's people are so stoic you just don't know about it, but I don't think it's as popular now as it once was.
No, it doesn't seem to be, because stoicism is about managing your emotions. It's not about not having any. It's just, you see people flipping out because, somebody that they don't like won an election or something, right? It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And the argument being that if you're able to manage your emotions, you can actually be more emotionally well-rounded and a happier, or at least a more content person, which you could make the argument that by managing your emotions, you actually become more in touch with them. So I'm not going to say that, but I think it's a sign of weakness, my opinion.
Well, I mean, it certainly can. If you allow your emotions to overtake you, then you lose advantage in a situation. And sometimes that's just not an acceptable thing to have happen.
Yeah, it's tough. And you know, I've been in meetings with 40 people and someone wants to break down crying. I'm like, great. I don't think that's appropriate in the workplace. You know, take it outside sort of thing. So like I said, I may burn some bridges with that one, but is how it is, I suppose.
C'est la vie. All right. Question number 5. If I were to ask your best friend, what is one thing they would say you need to work on the most and why?
So this is the one I wanted to check because I do have part of a related answer in this one, but wanted to include it under this question. So my best friend would tell me, he'd say, you need to be more sociable. You need to cast a wider social network, I suppose. But I would push back on that. I generally don't like people. I am not a people person. I have a small circle of friends. I have a small circle of acquaintances. I have a small, circle of coworkers that I know that I'm comfortable with and have known for years and years and years. And that's great. I know enough people. I don't need to know more people. I am very much not an extrovert. I am an introvert. Years ago, I used to teach a college class and one of the things we taught was the Myers-Briggs type indicators. And we would go through the whole thing and have college kids, usually freshmen, kind of work through that process and see what that meant and how well it fit them, sort of thing. And a lot of people said that the Myers-Briggs system is kind of pseudoscience. It's flash in the pan sort of stuff. Some years it's very popular, others not so much, but I found it to be very accurate for me. I'm very comfortable with who I know and don't need necessarily more than that. Not to say that if I make a new friend that I got to push somebody else out. It's not like there's a finite number, but I'm not actively looking for casting a wider social net. So, and my comment related to this is, I think honestly with social media, I think friendship, the term friendship, the large, capital F friendship, I think that term has been devalued. I think what people used to consider a friend or a lifelong friend, if you think about when you're growing up 30, 40 years ago, those friends you still know, you made those connections and they were very strong. And now as people are like, I have 6,000 friends. No, you don't. You have 6,000 people who clicked, agree to be fake friends on social media. That's it. Somebody you follow, somebody follows you. They're not your friend. So I think as part of that, I think the social component to society as part of social has been watered down to the point where people are not building as strong relationships anymore. So like I said, I have a small circle of friends and acquaintances and people at work and people at church and all that, but they are very strong bonds. In fact, I would define friendship, and I joked about this a couple of years ago with somebody, that I find the fact that, I think it's Facebook uses friends as its term for connections. But to me, a friend is someone who can call, I call it the airport test. Somebody can call you at 2:00 in the morning. Hey, I need you to pick me up at the airport. Or someone you would feel comfortable calling at 2 a.m. Hey, can you pick me up at the airport? If it's not that, that's not a friend. That's like the base level for what a friend is. Because if someone's willing to do that, then that's like the minimum to get in on what I would consider to be a friendship. Anything that's, someone you've never met and just online, this guy's my friend. No, it's not a friend. That's an acquaintance. That's somebody that's an online buddy, I guess, but it's different. So my best friend would tell me, you need to know more people. And I would say, nope, I know enough.
I like the airport test. It reminds me of, there's this YouTuber out there, Doug Benson. He does comedy videos and whatnot, but he's got all these friends on Facebook, and he picked them out by random, like 2 or 3, and like actually showed up at their house without telling them, and just like wanted to hang out or whatever, just to see their reactions. It was hilarious. But
yeah, hey, we're friends. Let's hang out. I brought pizza.
Yep.
I don't think it would work. And I think if you were to have, and this would be an interesting sociological experiment, get a bunch of 7-year-olds together and have them define what a friend is. 7-year-olds in 2021, and then go ask a bunch of them in like 1981 what friends are. Define a friend, and you're going to get different answers.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. Somebody should do that.
Step one, get a time machine.
Yeah. All right. Question number 6. What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
So for this one, as I was thinking about it, I would say anything where I have a new topic or a new subject, something new to explore, and especially if that new thing has a huge body of knowledge behind it. So, for example, hobbies or interests or whatever. But over the years, I was into, like I mentioned before, I used to put together LAN parties and build PCs and things like that. My first job after college was a sysadmin, so it kind of felt natural. But, PCs, I was into cars for many years, modifying cars, building cars. A friend and I used to run cars in demolition derbies. At times I've been into shooting sports or into podcasting or now into streaming and things. So it was anything that's kind of like a new area of interest or a new area to explore. If there's a huge body of knowledge behind it, I love it because I can just dig into that for hours and days and months and years. And you're always learning stuff. And life is all about learning. If you get out of school and you've never read a book again after that, no more pencils, no more books. That's the wrong attitude to life. Life is about exploring and enlightening and entertaining yourself, but it's about growing intellectually. So if I can find something new out there, that is what what turns me on, especially creatively. Something new I can mess with, something new I need to find out. Like, for example, today, this just happened actually about 20 minutes before the show. It's a new piece of software we're using at work to do some work stuff. And I was looking at it's cloud-based. Everything's cloud-based these days. Mm-hmm. But I was looking at building the calendar invites for people to join these sessions. And I was looking at the URL for that, and it had kind of the company name and your little your sub account and other stuff in there. Kind of the session information was in there. But then there's this long string of token in the actual URL. And I looked at that and said, is that token for my account to join this cloud session? Or is that for anybody in the session? So I started exploring that and found out that if you remove that token and joined the session without that information, it would dump you into your corporate, your company's, your organization's session. You couldn't join the live sharing thing that was going on, but you could get in and see what was there. You could see all the information. You could see all the documents, everything. You couldn't access them, but you could see them. I was like, this is weird. So then I thought, wait a minute, this is a cloud-based system. What if I just take this URL string and I cut out the company name and I just put that in quotes and just go over to Google and search for that? Boom, thousands of other organizations were in there. I thought, well, this is fun. So we need to start looking at security on this stuff. And this was it was part of a bit of backstory. It's part of a longer evaluation of software packages. And this was one we were like, hey, this meets all our needs. There's a couple things it doesn't quite do, but this one's pretty solid. And then found that, you can get access to damn near anybody's stuff. If they have a live sharing session going, you can see everything they're doing right now without it asking for a password, without it asking for anything. You can't participate, but you can view all that stuff, which was scary. And that's not something that, would be high on my list of stuff to learn. But now, from a intellectual standpoint, I find that fascinating that now, as crappy as my cybersecurity skill set is, that's not my background. The little bit I had was able to just very most rudimentary sense, get into this system and be someplace I'm not supposed to be. And now it's like, what else are we doing that's not secure? So like I said, this is about 20 minutes before. In fact, I'm still getting texts about it because now it's kind of blowing up. And we brought it up to the company and said, you guys know about this? And they're like, oh, it doesn't happen. So we did a screen share and showed them and they went, oh shit. So now we're getting all these emails from them about what to do. So, but from an intellectual standpoint, I find that fascinating.
Well, it's a new feature where they're going to archive through Google and automatically index all your sessions.
Well, it does make you wonder. This was one of the things that somebody on the call brought up. This has probably been there since the beginning. Who all knows about this, didn't tell anybody, and just has been using it to find their competitors. So,
well, surely you can't be the first. If somebody was going to actively
I
attack
would sure
the
as heck
system,
hope not, but you never know.
Well,
because I was joking about it today when we were talking about this before we had the call with the company. I said, I said it almost as a joke. I mean, like, what happens if I just go delete our company name from the end and just put this into Google? And like I said, thousands of these things. And you read about this all the time with things like people's security cameras and things that are just wide open. I'm like, they didn't do even this level of testing to verify that they have a secure system and people are using this in their organizations for document and file sharing and stuff. Holy smokes. So yeah, it's kind of a scary thing. But like I said, from an intellectual standpoint, I find it fascinating. So I spent like the entire afternoon not doing what I was supposed to be doing at work, but doing this stuff because it was more interesting to me. So
yeah, I like how you pointed out anything with a huge body of knowledge behind it, because I think that's what draws me towards things like this, like maybe more towards more fantastical things like D&D or like Tolkien universe, or lore of that sort, just because I don't know, even though it's not like, I don't know, you could argue that it's practical in a sense. I don't know if Silmarillion could really fall into that or not, but I don't know. That's I've never really thought about it like that. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, when I read, so Lord of the Rings is an interesting one. I didn't get into Tolkien until, I don't know, and I wouldn't say I'm into him, but I didn't read it until it was before the movies were coming out, but it was right as they were kind of like, hey, these are in production right now. So, I was after college. And I for the longest time, I would try to start with Fellowship of the Ring. And that, if you go back and look at that book is dry as crap, the first like 100 pages. There's a big hurdle to get over. And I think it loses a lot of people who try to read that. And it is super dry at the very beginning. But what helped me, as terrible as it sounds, is I started, and also it's a very dense, there's a lot of characters, a lot of history, there's a lot of things. So I had my Atlas of Middle Earth. I had the older version. I had some of these encyclopedias and things. So I started looking as reference books. So now I'm sitting there reading what should just be like, I'm going to read this novel. But yet I've got, because of as you mentioned, this huge body of knowledge behind it, I've got reference books. I've got, atlases. I've got encyclopedias, things I can look up. This was all, before the internet was so ubiquitous. It existed, but it wasn't the same. It's like dial-up modem town. But, so I'm taking notes. I'm jotting down things. I've got Post-it notes all over so I can track what's going on because I find that fascinating. And I would get derailed and realize I haven't read further in the narrative for a couple of days because I went back to read something else. And the addition of at least of that trilogy that I had these huge appendices going through all the back history and would tell you the list of all the families and all these people going back through the Second Age and the First Age and all. So it was fascinating. So, intellectually, I found that great. From a narrative standpoint, it's terrible because people aren't going to get through that. And so you really got to work your way through, through those books. But I think maybe that's why, and maybe it's a common thing that someone who's done that now loves them so much because it is so dense, because it has that level of detail. Whereas someone just kind of picks up, oh, this will be a fun read. No, it's not. It's not at all. And it takes a lot to get into. But I think it's more fulfilling that way. I don't know, but it's definitely, it's a different experience than, like I said, I read these crappy Clive Cussler adventure books. And you can just crank through those in 3 or 4 hours, but it's a different type of reading, I suppose.
Yeah. It's a different beast. You know that a fantasy book is going to be good if it has a map in front of it, like a map in the first few pages. Or
if there's a giant book of maps. In fact, actually, it's funny you mention that. That's always been one of my complaints about these Cussler books, because they always take place like this guy in Egypt and this guy in like Burkina Faso and this guy over here in Canada. It was like, give me a damn map, So one of my frustrations. I'm sure it's a publisher thing. Like, nope, because then we have to pay someone to make a map and do all this stuff, and so.
And then if they don't lay it out right, then you got to like stretch the spine back to see it in the crease and everything. Yeah. All right. Question number 7. What was the most embarrassing or humbling experience of your life?
I realize now as I look at these, because I took the questions, like I said, over the last couple of weeks, and I've been filling in notes on them, not filling them out, but putting notes under each one. Clearly I responded to this one before I responded to the one about emotion, because I mentioned my flunking out of college there. But I really should have mentioned it here. So, or really should have saved that for this one. But so the most embarrassing or humbling experience of my life was I flunked out of college. I bombed out in my freshman year. I just, at age 18 was not ready for college. And why it was embarrassing was not because, flunk out of college, because no one cares. That's the joke about people in high school or in college and worrying about their GPA and stuff. It's like, unless you're going into an advanced degree program or you're in a top tier institution, no one cares. Because you get your degree. Can you do what you need to do with it? Do you have the skill set, et cetera? But for me, flunking out was especially embarrassing because both of my parents were each valedictorians of their high schools. They both have advanced degrees from, I'll just say it's a world-class elite research university. They met in college, but they both went to this really high-end elite university. It's not Ivy League, but right up there. And I flunked out my freshman year from crappy, big state school. Just boom, dumped right out. And then, like I said, after I kind of putzed around for a couple of months and then signed up for the local community college, and I failed out of community college. And that was super embarrassing because you can see my parents were probably just like, what the hell's wrong with this kid? It's what you do after high school, you go to college, and they both had great success with that. And I did not. And all my, my high school friends and, they were doing fine. Why couldn't I? What was wrong, sort of thing. Like I said, I just wasn't ready looking back with, another, 25 years of retrospective vision. I wasn't ready for college at age 18. If I would go talk with my 18-year-old self, hey, there's a question for you. What'd you tell your 18-year-old self? It's don't go to college right now. At least don't go to college for what you think you're going to do in college. But I did later go back to school, and I went back to school on my own terms and on my own dime, and student loans, which I paid back, by the way. So that's another pet peeve of mine. I think, by the way, that I'm going to derail here for a minute, but I think that's a disingenuous thing. The amount of student loans that an 8-year-old kid is allowed to sign up for in degrees in, medieval art history. It's like, no. Someone needs to tell them, do not do that. You are never going to pay those back. You're going to have that debt over your head for the rest of your life. Do not do that. If you want to study art history, that's great. I have no problem with that if someone wants to, if they want to make that the focus of their life. But that is such a narrow field, or any of those. There are these narrow fields, and it's like, if you want to be an expert in Asian literature, great. But there's probably 5 jobs in the world for that right now. So do not take out $150,000 in loans to support that that study. Go find something else to do, or do it on your own dime. I mean, you can get the same, frankly, the same education by just reading the books on it. So.
Well, and today with the amount of information that's available online, although it's zonking our social lives, you have access to being an expert in so many fields that, decades past, the layman in so many fields could be expert.
Yeah, absolutely. It used to be that and universities are a weird thing to me. Universities used to be, this was the paragon of intellectual development. You had to go to these institutions, these monolithic institutions that had all the smartest people in the world all came here, and you send your children when they're of age, and we will educate them on the ways of the world and send them out in the world to be better people. And now they're either so focused on really narrow fields and political manipulations and things. It's like, this is weird. But to your point, the knowledge no longer is limited to these. You don't have to go to the library at the university and look up a book to find the information you want. For the most part, it's out there somewhere else, or you access it online, sort of thing. So it's strange to see that, universities still have these monstrous libraries. I remember when I was in college, the third time, libraries were a place where it was full of books. You had to be quiet, no food or drink. They had all these rules, like you go check out the book and they would let you look at it, and then you have to bring it back to the reference desk and stuff. Whatever you do not put that book back on the stacks, put it on the cart, let them do it, because you're going to screw it up and someone else can't find it. But now libraries are like, oh, we've got the media center in here, and you can, there's a coffee bar right downstairs, and there's a cafeteria in the library. I'm like, what the hell? I think they recognize this. They're no longer the center of campus, but now they have to change their model. But in doing so, they've kind of lost their way. So back to my initial comment on these student loans is like, I had to take out student loans to finish college. but I paid them back. That's part of the reason I still had I had a 20-year-old car. Was I didn't go out and buy a new car. I drove that same car. It was fine. Didn't, I never questioned whether or not it was going to start up. It had air conditioning. It was great, but I didn't need a new one. So I saved that money and that went back towards the student loans, and I dutifully paid off my student loans. And, so now these stories of kids with these monster student loans, I'm like, well, part of that's on them. We mentioned that before. I firmly believe that's on them for doing that. And secondly, I think it's on the institutions for allowing that to happen, and they should be held to account for that. So anyway, so back to the initial question. Most embarrassing or humbling experience of my life was bombing out of college at age 18, completely, not against, but completely as a surprise to the expectations of both of my parents, who did very well in college, but it just was not a good fit for me at age 18. I had to go back on my own terms to do that. And as I mentioned before, I think that's why I think that, my earlier comment, no one's going to help you through life. You have to fix that yourself. You have to figure out what's going to work for you. No one's going to go in and like, oh, I'm going to go complain to my dad, and dad's going to call the professor and they're going to fix my grades. No, that's on you. So, but in general, that entire experience was incredibly embarrassing.
Yeah. The famous quote from Admiral Akbar comes to mind. It's a trap. The whole, that system, because, you said if people don't read after they're done with that, then in my mind, it's like they've done their job, right? After they're done with quote unquote learning, and it's not where learning stops, right?
Yeah, and I think so much of it is just like the way that and I guess I can only speak from the American experience, but you go through school to grade 12, and then you go to college. That's what you do. That is what is expected for the vast majority of people. And I think that so much of that, they need to say there's other options. Maybe these people need to wait a couple of years. Maybe they shouldn't go at age 18. Maybe they should look at trade schools. Maybe they should look at apprenticeship programs. And maybe there's something else out there that is just as valid. And then if they're like, hey, now I'm 22, 24, 25, I'd like to go get my degree in medieval, art history. Great. They can do that. That is their choice. But jumping into an 18-year-old and somebody literally saying, sign this piece of paper and we will give you $200,000 to do this. And you're like, all right, this is how life works. Well, sorry, it doesn't.
Until you've spent, 5, 8, 10 years going down that rabbit hole only to find out that the job doesn't exist, is obsolete, industry has shifted, or you are just misled, which is pretty much what's happening, which is sad because the monolithic systems are just geared towards driving specific industries, which we're just not in that world anymore.
And not even to that. It's interesting, driving the industries. Like I said, I work as an IT manager. And if I look at my entire team, there's probably in a couple of, close departments in my group, I would say 12 to 15 people. And very few of them have degrees in that, you think, oh, if you work as a system administration or deployment or whatever, you have a degree in computer science. And I think there's maybe 2 who do. Everyone kind of comes in sideways because if you have the skill set, I don't care what your background's in, can you do the job? And we had a guy who worked for us for the longest time, and he had a PhD in folklore. But, and he started going through that program because he wanted to be a teacher, and he wanted to teach folklore. And to your point, he got all the way through his PhD after, 7 or 10 or 12 years or something like that, while he was working part-time and doing other things. And then he got a job in IT and kind of went sideways into that. Well, he did eventually leave because he found a teaching position in folklore, but it took him like 15 years after he got his PhD that he finally found a job in his field. And I was like, well, but at least he was, making a good living in general IT stuff before that. A lot of people don't have that to fall back on. And they just like, well, I have my degree in this field and I'll just wait for the job. It's like, well, yeah, but now you're making $14 an hour at Home Depot or something. That's not going to cover the gap there.
Yeah, I don't think that it's easy for younger people to fathom like the amount of money that actually is when you sign that paper. Like, I can't even, and I have a hard time wrapping around my brain around it now. Like, to have that much debt, and then like how do you even, like, how do you own a house? How do you pay rent? Like, it just seems ridiculous.
Just put that all on your credit card. It's great.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah. I can just keep rolling over the balance to new ones.
Well,
there's people who do that, and there's almost like a science to like managing your debt by just pushing it around from one institution to another.
Or always stay in continuing education, always in a college class, and you only pay it off when you're done. Known a few
Does
people
that
have
work?
done
Can
that.
you just keep like taking one class?
I know somebody. It might have been 2 classes at a time because you had to qualify for like a basic, part-time enrollment. But yeah, I knew somebody who was doing that.
Were they not working full time too?
Oh no, they were working. They were working full time as well.
I just wonder how you do that because you'd have to. That's a time commitment to go through these classes.
Yep, time commitment to dodge a debt.
And what's going to happen when they're in their 50s and they're finally like, I can't do this anymore, and the bank's going to call them?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because that debt compounds too. That's the thing is, if you owe $100,000 and then 10 years from now you don't owe $100,000, you probably owe $135,000.
Well, the good news is, it used to be you had to go through that system because the information was siloed or hard to get to. Now, I mean, there's so much information in so many fields that, it's like you said, you can be self-taught, and as long as you find the right team, skills are what matter.
Yeah, like a good friend of mine is, he works for another technology company, and he's got there's a director position there that's opening up, and he's like, oh man, I'm going to go for this director position. And I keep thinking, he is without doubt one of the brightest people I know, but he doesn't have the advanced degrees. He doesn't have kind of like the background that would be traditionally expected of someone, in a director level position, because they just because of like the pedigree, they're going to say, we want someone who's had straight, this type of experience, straight line management experience for 10 or 12 years. And you're going to have 2 advanced degrees and preferably a terminal degree from a business school with that sort of background. And he doesn't have any of that. It doesn't mean he's not capable of doing the job, but the way it's structured, they're going to toss his application out just based on the, on the face value. And so it's an interesting thing because we're still seeing that kind of that dichotomy in society where you need to have a degree to even apply for this job. But then people like me who do hiring all the time, I don't care what your degree's in or what your if you have a degree, I guess. I would say, honestly, I would think, no, I like to know that people have a degree, though I may want to change that because to me, college isn't so much about learning, because we talked about this. It's not about learning facts. You can learn that stuff anywhere. It's about becoming a critical thinker and a more well-rounded individual. But I don't know if that's true anymore of the modern university system. I don't know if that still holds, to the same level or not. So we have to think about that.
Well, only if you're taking like thinking classes, like philosophy courses, I suppose. And even then, it's like, what school of thought are you exposed to? Right.
Well, and I think that's why a lot of the college was big on like, you have to take a certain percentage of, not percentage, but a certain number of like these general ed courses. I think a lot of people assume that's so you can kind of explore different areas and decide which one to major in. No, it's so you have some background in history, in civics, in economics, in general sciences, in the arts. It's so you have a well-rounded appreciation for society at large. Not, I focused on microbiology for 4.5 years and that's my field and I don't know anything else and there we go. Well, that may be of value, but is that the same? Does that person who has the same, 2 people 10 years on, if they have the same job, are they living the same style of life if one person was just like straight and narrow the entire time and someone else had a much wider experience, but then they're doing the same thing later? So I don't know.
Yeah, I think that there's a bonus question that may or may not come up, but I think I would know what your answer is to that about changing certain aspects of society based on.
Bill, why don't you just ask
talking? Well, I don't know. I was actually thinking that you could ask the bonus questions, Adam.
Sounds good.
All right. We're going to move on then. Question number 8. What is your greatest fear? How did you overcome it?
Spiders. I overcame it by becoming Spider-Man. They let them bite me until I gain superpowers. No, though that is my answer when people, because they ask that question all the time in job interviews. Like, hey, what's your greatest weakness? Spiders. Yeah. But no. So for me, I think as was true with many people, public speaking, getting up in front of people, I would freak out and flop sweat, and you're doing the thing and your hands are shaking and you don't know. And so as trite as that sounds, public speaking was probably my greatest fear. But how did I overcome that is I started giving I was required to give a lot of presentations in college. You had to like do reports. And at least when I was in college, it was, all right, we're going to pick, you're this group or that person. You have to come up and stand in front of the class and you have to talk about what you did on, for your report or whatever. So that was the way of things. And this was before PowerPoint. So it was just you standing there. But I started giving a lot of presentations there, got a little more comfortable. And then after I was working for a number of years, I would say probably, and I had opportunities earlier on, but probably after 3 or 4 years when I was working in IT, I was comfortable explaining things to people and kind of working with them to help them understand and making technical topics become, relevant to non-technical folks. And I started kind of giving these little presentations at conferences and things. Like, hey, I want to talk about this, or I want to talk about a case study on this, or, whatever. And it kind of became fun. And now I do a bunch of that. I present at 5 or 6 different conferences a year. I do multiple sessions at them. I find that fun. I look forward to that. It's almost like a vacation for me, even though for a lot of people that's work, but I enjoy that aspect of getting up in front of people and talking to them about things. A couple of years ago, I'd started a new job, and one of the guys I worked with he's an old timer. He'd been there for years and years and years. Super smart guy. He was always interested in kind of like training the new guys. And his thing was like, I'm just asking for 2 hours a week, and I'll train all these new guys on stuff. I kept thinking, that's a lot of time a week to give one of the senior guys to train the new guys. But also, while like I say, he's very, very, very smart, super smart guy. He's also not good at kind of getting to the point or reining in his anecdotes. So he's kind of all over the place. So when I had been there for less than a year, I had been at this company less than a year, and our director's director, so one of the VPs said, I went to a conference and one of the VPs said, hey, can you present to the entire division on what you did at the conference and what you saw and let us know about some of the new things coming and all that stuff. And I did. I put together a little thing and did kind of a lunch and learn. And afterwards, that guy who had been at this company for years asked, he said, how did you get to do that? How did she let you do that? And I was like, she just asked me. And I think he was a little frustrated because he was thinking that he was the expert. And so he had all this knowledge to share, but he's not good at sharing it. He has the knowledge, but he doesn't know how to like get it out in a, not coherent, but in like a concise way. We have a whiteboard in the hallway, and he always jokes. He's like, I'm going to go out and use the whiteboard and show people how this works. And I was like, well, yeah, that's fine. The problem is you will spend 45 minutes out there drawing stuff on the whiteboard, and it's technically correct, but it is hard for anybody to grok that. And I think I just naturally have the ability to get that stuff across to other people without losing them and keeping it kind of light and fun and all that. And like I said, I enjoy doing it. So one of our VPs asked me to do this after I joined the company, and he was just kind of like, why are you doing that? But to me, it was like, oh, they're seeing it as value, because I'm sure what she said was, I mean, I didn't know her very well, but she probably asked my director and said, hey, who went to this conference and who would be good to kind of present on what you saw and what you learned, sort of thing. And hey, hire this, bring this new guy in we just hired, have him do it. So I did. But 20 years earlier than that, or 10 years earlier than that would have been just like, I would have been freaked out over that. But like I said, I found it fun and I enjoy doing that. So I got over this fear of public speaking by just doing it a lot. And that's, it's now, like I said, it's now fun. I consider it a vacation. If I get to go to one of these conferences and I present a couple of sessions, I find that entertaining. So.
It's really neat when you can turn a fear into something that you enjoy doing. Like I think my answer for this was, I don't know if it was death or not, but like you can't really enjoy dying all the time like you can with like public speaking or whatnot. So yeah, it's a really cool answer.
And you shouldn't be afraid of death in general. You can't control that. So
right.
Everybody does it, Bill.
Some people more than once.
Nobody fails. You're going to do it right.
Except that one guy. He's been a failure all his life and he failed to death too. So.
Question number 9. What is your single greatest driving force in life and how do you further it?
So this is the question that I answered last, and I kind of half-assed this one because I have kind of an answer, but not a good one. So if you're looking for like a central ethos, I don't have that. But I would say my single greatest driving force is one more of, I don't know, acceptance, I guess. I mean, we're all put on this miserable little world for a short period of time, so we have to make do with the time we have, with the time we're given. So, but that's not a very good response. So if you're looking for like, here's the meaning of life, I don't have that. 42 or something. But if you're asking, if I can flip the question slightly and say, if this question is more of, if it's how I exist, in life, then I would say I follow that camping ethos sort of thing, the leave no trace. Frankly, if possible, can you leave the world a better place than when you got there? And I learned that again from the Boy Scouts. You come across a camping site, when you leave, it should look like you weren't there, or if somebody was camping there, it looks clean and organized. There's not trash everywhere and all that. But if you come across a camping site that's messed up because somebody was there a couple of days ago and just left it a mess, clean that up. It's not your trash, but you need to pack out all that trash anyway. So if you can leave the world a better place than the way it was when you got there, if you can improve the world in some small way, great. I'm not going to say what that is or how to do it. So I'd say that, can you live a moral life? Can you aspire to be an example to others and help them improve their station? I mean, you don't have to be a saint, but I guess as long as you're not an overtly terrible person, I think that's net positive. I don't know, that's a shitty driving force for life, but
No, I love the answer. I love the camping ethos. You leave it better than you found it. I think if you can go through life with that and you get towards the end of it and you could say that you did that, then good on you, right?
When I was in college, we had I guess it's kind of morbid to think about now. And I don't remember what class it was. Maybe it was a psychology class. I don't remember. But one of the assignments we had was, what are you going to put on your tombstone, and describing what that meant and all that stuff. And I remember the professor got pissed because my response was, existed. My tombstone literally said existed, period, nothing more, period. And he's like, well, that's a shitty response. You're supposed to put all these things on there and all these great flowery things. And after the discussion on that and me describing why I thought that was important, et cetera, I said, okay, you convinced me. I changed my mind. I don't want that on my tombstone because I don't want a tombstone. And now the closest thing I think, and at the time it was like, I want to be, cremated, compressed into a that's now a thing you can get compressed into the jewelry or something. When I get compressed into a small little pebble and like thrown at Kenny Loggins really hard. But I think probably the best response I've seen is the one for, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the show. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
But one of the characters, Frank Reynolds, his thing is just, when he says, when he dies, just throw me in the trash. I'm like, that's a good response. Why are we going through and spending thousands or tens of thousands of dollars on all this stuff? You just rot in the ground, leave the world a better place. Just throw them in the trash. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like I said, it's kind of a morbid philosophy on things, but
it's only morbid to the people that are alive.
That's a good point. So, and like in my family, there's in my larger family, there's like the famous family plot at the cemetery where, I haven't lived near there for like 35 years or 40 years or something. But we still have relatives around and like, we got this big plot and you can be in there. I was like, no, I have no interest in that. It just seems odd, to look to that. So, I guess I would see that as to leave no trace. Don't embalm me and stick me in a box for $6,000 and put me in the ground. Just seems weird. So.
Yeah, seems cold and uncomfortable, even when you're dead for some reason. I don't like it either. Question number 10: who were/are your role models and why?
So I'm gonna put two here. I've mentioned one several times. I would say my dad, and this is probably a pretty common response. I would say without a doubt, my dad is probably the smartest person I know. He's very mechanically oriented, or very mechanically inclined. He's good with tools and fixing stuff. And, for somebody who has advanced degrees in physics, he's also good at building cabinets or working on a car or something like that. And I learned a lot of skills from him doing that. But he's good at business. He's actually a very spiritual, very religious person too. So he's good when you have these kind of crises of faith you get through your life when relationships aren't going well or marriages are falling apart. It's good advice. But at the same time, I get that kind of stoicism from him because somebody asked me this question years ago. I don't think I ever saw him like straight up yell at anybody or get really mad or break down and cry. It just wasn't what he did. But he was always there as a kind of a rock, for, that father figure, which is what you'd like and what I aspire to be as well to my kids. So I think it's easy for me to say he is and still is, because he's still around. He's easily a role model. But then my second one I'm going to say is also my older brother, I have an older brother who is 5 years older than me. And he's still, I'm in my mid 40s. And so he's somebody who, is he 50? I think he's 50, coming up on 50. Yes, he's coming up on 50. He's still kind of a role model in that sense where you're like, I still look up. In fact, we're going to see him this weekend, 4th of July. He lives a couple hours away. Get the families together sort of thing. And that'll be fun, but I'm looking forward to that because he's always been kind of this, like, I think he's 5 years older. So he was older enough that when growing up, he was always like the grown up kid sort of thing. He was in, high school when I was in elementary school. He was in college when I was just starting in high school. He graduated from college when I was in, he was always kind of like the person you're going to be in a couple of years. And we went very different routes in life, but, I still look up to him as an inspiration in a lot of things. And a lot of things he does is terrible. He's terrible with money. He's terrible with he has a bad habit of talking about being a cheapskate. And I mentioned this before, but I'm a cheapskate, but he is in a different way. He hangs on to cars forever because he'll always get around to fixing them. I think he's that guy that, and everyone has one of these in your neighborhood where the nicely kept house that has 17 cars, that's his house. And so, but that's just a different way of approaching things. I have a vehicle to get me around. That's what I need. I don't need 4, and I'm not going to continue working on other ones, but his different philosophy. But still, he's my older brother. I grew up looking up to him. I still do. And it's kind of weird to think about that is somebody, like I said, I'm in my mid 40s and he's someone who's almost 50 and I still look up to him as like, I'm going to be like that when I grow up. But, am I really? I don't know, but still very much a role model. So my dad, my older brother, probably trite, pat answers, but that's the way the family goes.
No, I don't think it's trite at all. I love it. The last two guests that we interviewed both had that answer as dad as one of their answers. But I love it when people have answers like that are so close to them, because we like to encourage our listeners that if you have these people in your life and they're close to you and you look up to them, go out and do a recording with them, ask them 13 questions, send it in to us. We can make an episode out of it, and you can pay homage to whoever your role model is. Homage, I don't know if that's the right word or not, but and then memorialize their worth, their wisdom into the annals of 13 questions and cyberspace. But
you're on the internet now.
Yeah. So no, good answer. I like it. Question number 11. What quality do you most admire in a woman?
Everyone's going to say, something very offensive or whatever. No, for me, it's brains. When I think about relationships, when I think about, I don't want to go personal stuff here, but when I think about, the wife and all that, it's someone who is arguably smarter than I am. I find intelligence, I find brains, I find intellect very sexy because it kind of gets in your head. And so you're thinking about this and you're thinking about this other person and this other intellect who is able to match wits with you and go far beyond. And it's an easy thing, but it's weird because that's hard to find initially in a relationship. You have to kind of work your way into that. So I think an early indication of that is finding someone who's got, a good sense of humor. I don't mean that in the generic sense. I don't mean like that, someone who can enjoy a joke. I think it was Scott Adams I heard, and I firmly believe this. I think he said that there's some study that 30% of people in the world don't have what we would consider a sense of humor. They don't get the joke when you're telling it, but they have learned how to look like they get the joke. So you have to kind of get to know people to determine, does this person actually have a sense of humor? So I think sense of humor is an early indicator of intellect, but for me anyway, it's someone who's got like a wicked dry sense of humor, like really deadpan, almost, kind of matter of fact, is an indication of intelligence. And it's worked out well for me so far. So
And that is one of the things I appreciate about you on OBDM is your sense of humor. I was gonna mention that before we started, but I forgot to. It's very witty. A few comedians come to mind. Mitch Hedberg, your fan, right?
In fact, at work a couple of days ago, no, it was about a month ago, I brought up the whole thing. And I had to explain who Mitch Hedberg was, but I had to explain his gag on belt loops and belts, where you have, you put on a belt to hold your pants up, but your pants have belt loops to keep your belt up. So what's really going on down there? And it's just that way of looking at things. So yeah.
Yeah, and then I appreciate that style. I don't know. It's not like British humor is kind of dry, but with the delivery of more along the lines of,
it's a sense of control and you don't see it coming.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you can get a joke to land without somebody knowing it's land, they've already started to process it. That's the beauty when you can get you're thinking one way and then you take a left turn to where you didn't think you could go. And when you don't see it coming, that's when you get hit. So I love it.
That's that. And you mentioned it's British. It's European humor in general is like that, but it's very deadpan. You're just going to kind of throw this comment out there, and people get half a beat past it before they realize what you said. In fact, I brought one up, and we need to figure it out. But I brought one up on the show last night. I don't know if you guys caught that one live or not, but Mike was talking about how he's got a theory about UFOs, and I said, "Is your theory?" And I just quickly threw it in there. I said, "Is your theory that they're very small at one end, much thicker in the middle, and very small at the other?" And he just looked at me like, "What?" And I said, one person in the audience got that joke. And if you do, let me know. I'll send you a t-shirt. And somebody in the chat knew exactly what that was from. And it's from a very old Monty Python record. It was not part of their TV show, not part of their movies, but one of their records they released in like the late 60s, early 70s. And somebody got it. And it just cracked me up because it was this long drawn out sketch about a woman who had a theory about dinosaurs. And the punchline was, because they brought on a talk show and she's going through all this thing about how this person had a new wild theory on what dinosaurs were and all this stuff. And her theory was dinosaurs were very small at one end, much thicker in the middle, and very small at the other. And that was her entire theory. And it was just like, what the hell is this? But that cracks me up so much. So it's that level of just super dry, deadpan humor. Because she, in character, that woman, who I believe played by John Cleese, was being serious. Just like, no, this is my theory. This is my scientific theory on dinosaurs. And everyone else like, this is absurd. No, but that's what makes it funny. Not because somebody falls down or it's pratfalls or in physical, physical humor is a different thing. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying that that level of dry, deadpan, matter-of-fact humor is, to my mind, is like an indication of someone who gets jokes like that is an indication of high intellect. And back to the question, that I think high intellect or somebody who's a smart person is, I find that to be very attractive in women. So, and like I said, it's worked out so far for me.
Yeah. Sense of humor, brains. These are qualities that have been mentioned before. Nobody, for any female listeners that we have, I don't know if there are any, but nobody to date, at least that I've interviewed, has said anything about a physical attribute. It always has to do with a sense of humor or the mind. So
I think everyone's afraid because they're assuming that's where everyone's going with it. But from a biological standpoint, that's the first thing that attracts you visually and physically to somebody. And then you have to get past that. So,
right. Yeah. Question number 12. What is the most courageous thing you've ever done or seen in your life?
So again, as I've done many times, I'm going to give kind of two answers here. Because there's two answers or two questions in the question, but for the most courageous thing that I've ever done, it's packing up the house, it's packing up everything and moving across the country. In fact, moving across the country multiple times to a place that we've never been, a place we've never lived, a place where we don't have connections, but that, that's where the new career opportunity is or whatever that might be, the new start. And I've done it multiple times. And I say that's courageous because, growing up, going through high school and college, you kind of stay in your comfort zone. You stay within a small geographic area because that's where your friends are, that's where your family is, all that stuff. But it takes a certain amount of chutzpah to kind of like, nope, we're moving 16,000 miles away, whatever that is. And to pack up and do that, A, it's a process. B, it's scary. There's a lot of unknowns. And C, it's a huge effort. physically, financially, emotionally, that, it's draining to do that. But after you've done it a couple of times, it becomes easier. But people still, when you mention that, hey, I'm the new guy sort of thing. Oh, where'd you work before? Oh, I worked in Seattle. People are like, holy shit, how'd you get here? When I moved to Seattle, people were like, well, where'd you work before that? And it was like, well, I was in Kansas City. Like, well, how'd you get in Seattle? So it's like just kind of all over. So, I think that's probably the most courageous or brave thing that I have experienced personally in my life. And it's something that if you would have asked me after college, even several years after college, no, I'd never consider that. Why would I do that? There's plenty of things right here. Why do I need to move all that? But that's now the way. And in fact, I get pushback sometimes from some people in other companies are like, I don't, how do they phrase this? It's going to start to raise questions about your career if every couple of years, it's been 5 or 6 years and you move somewhere else. And it's like, well, but that's the way that, in my opinion, I think that's the way modern career advancement works. It's no longer do you get a job with that same company at age 21 and you work there for 40 years until you retire. That's very, very, very rare these days. To in my experience anyway, to advance in that career ladder, you may have to make those diagonal jumps to other organizations. Now, in your overall career path, there are always going to be kind of improvements, but like I said, I not switched careers, but changed career direction a little over 10 years ago, and financially lost way out on that. But I've been kind of slowly working my way back, but in a different path, in a different way that is much more fulfilling. So, anyway, so. I would say I guess if you were asking 2021 Cretched, that's not necessarily brave because it happens all the time. Every couple of years, it's time to throw everything in the truck and off we go. But if you're asking like 1999 Cretched, what the hell are you doing moving across the country? So I would consider that to be courageous, I guess. And then my second part of that is I have had the pleasure of working with other people throughout my career or knowing other people who just are able to give selflessly without question, who just they'll give you the shirt off their back. I'm not going to call them out by name, but I know a number of people could probably rattle off 5 or 6 who are like that, who would, they'll come pick you up at the airport, even if they're not your friend sort of thing. They'll, help you with whatever you need. They'll help you with a work project, help you with something at church or whatever. They'll do whatever you want. And they never ask for anything back. They're completely selfless about it. That I think is probably, in a more general sense, that's probably the bravest type of person that I know. Someone who just has that ability to, they don't question it. They just go do it because that's who they are and that's how they've been their entire lives. I think anybody who can do that, especially on a moment's notice with no planning, no foresight or anything, just like that person is incredibly brave and they're a better person than I am because I would have trouble doing that.
Well, it just speaks to being of service. Like might be uncomfortable, and this is an extreme case, of course, right? But I like to think that being of service isn't something that is first nature to people. I think that we're more selfish in general, and it takes a little bit of courage to go out and help other people because on the face of it, there's nothing in it for you, but
yeah,
if you look a little bit deeper.
Like, would somebody ask me to help? I'm like, what's in it for me? I don't know if I want to do that. I had a friend the other day ask, he said, hey, can you, and it was an OBDM problem, but he said, hey, can you run me over this place? I got to pick up my car after work. And I said, I got to be home right on time because I stream live on Wednesdays. And he said, oh, okay. Well, I said, Wednesdays is just not a good day. And he said, well, what about Thursday morning, like before work? So I had to get up early to go meet this guy and take us out to pick up a car sort of thing. And I was like, I found it to be kind of a pain in the ass. And I was kind of pissed about it, but I guess I did my part, I guess. But there are people out there who will just be like, you bet I'll be there. You let me know when and I'll do it. But I was just like begrudgingly willing to do it. And yeah, it's what's in it for me. And it's probably not the right response from a sociological perspective to ask, what do I get out of it? But that's the first place I went. So I thought about me first, not him first.
Yeah, I think that's something that all of us do, at least to start out with. But just my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. All right, that brings us to question number 13. What does it mean to be a man in today's world?
My first response to this one, the first thing that came to mind that I wrote down was say what you mean what you say, be honest about it. But I modified that slightly, or I'm going to leave it in. I'm going to add to that, because as I mentioned before, one of the books that I think was foundational to me was the Boy Scout handbook. Not so much in the book itself, but kind of the information that it imparts in the activities it's part of. But the thing for being a man, in Boy Scouts, you have the Scout Law, you have the Scout Oath, you have the Scout Promise. But to me, the Scout Oath, and these things started coming back after like 30 some years. I was able to recite the Scout Law like out of nowhere, and people thought it was hilarious when I was doing it. Just because it's so ingrained in your head. But anyway, so the Scout Oath is what I think, the Boy Scout Oath. And I don't know if this is the same. It may have changed now, but what it used to say was, on my honor, I will do my best to do my duty, to God and my country, to obey the Scout Law, which is the longer list of things, to help other people at all times, to keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight. That right there in like 3 sentences is like, do this stuff and you will be a good man. It's not to say that you need to do more than that, but at very minimum, do these things. So yeah, that's my short pat answer is, again, go back to Boy Scouts. I think that if you live up to that, and let me rephrase, if you make the attempt to live up to that, mm-hmm. I think that's fair to say then that's what it means to be a man in today's world.
Well said. I'm fascinated by Eagle Scouts because they're a very unique breed of people. And it's at least how it used to be. It used to be a very difficult thing that you had to have a lot of persistence to go through and get. And, on the other side of it, it crafted unique individuals.
Yeah, and that was something I am an Eagle Scout.
Oh.
My dad was an Eagle Scout. My older brother is an Eagle Scout. Phenomenal. And that was kind of that was like beaten into us, not literally, but you are going mm-hmm. to go all the way through this program and you are going to become a better person because you are going to complete this process.
Phenomenal.
It is incredibly difficult. In fact, that came up at work about 3 or 4 years ago. I don't remember how it came up in conversation, but I made some comment to it. And our IT director said, "You're an Eagle Scout?" He said, "Why is that not on your resume?" And I said, "Because now it's kind of become a political thing."
Really?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Depending, not to me.
Yeah, I can see.
But depending on who is looking at resumes, they may toss that out.
Crazy.
Based just on that. And it's like, it's tough to be. I don't know. If I knew the people who would be looking at the resume would recognize it for what it is, then absolutely I'm going to list that. But at the same time, you can't guarantee that anymore.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, if I was interviewing for any position and I knew somebody was an Eagle Scout, I'd want to talk to them no matter what. I mean, it's for a young person to go through the system, it's an amazing feat. So yeah. But again, that's really cool. You seem like an Eagle Scout, so that's that's a great compliment. So.
Well, I appreciate that. I think it is a foundational program. Mm-hmm. At least, let me rephrase. 30 years ago, it was a foundational program. Mm-hmm. 35 years ago. I don't know what it's like today because it certainly has morphed quite a bit. But I would like to think it still has some aspects of that. I don't know for sure though.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, if that creed that you read stays the same and it hasn't morphed, then that's a good answer. Good words to live by for sure. And that is the end of the 13 questions. So you could be out of the hot seat officially, or we could keep going and Adam can ask you some bonus questions. Do you have time?
Sure. I don't know what the bonus questions are, so they're going to be off the cuff and probably nowhere near as well conceived. But
that's fine. I'm going to my favorite question that Bill almost asked. What institution of society or structural aspect of modern life would you change given the chance?
Public education system, without a doubt. I would put back things like home economics. I would put back things like civics classes, government classes. I would force kids to go through things like physical education and mock UN and all these things. Debate club, all these things that for one reason or another, have all been whittled away to make things more equitable and more equal. I think that's only devaluing society in general. I think we talked about this at length a little bit ago about universities. I think that's just kind of the paragon of what's happened. But the public education system is just it's a travesty. I think devaluing education to the point of making it equal for everybody is absolutely the wrong way to go. There are kids in this world who absolutely need help to get through school, but to lower the bar for everybody else so that they don't feel bad is just absolutely the wrong way to go.
Yeah, it seems like you're a fan of, the older type of education system that wasn't pass the test to get it done. It's learn the life skills to learn, and here's some information that's going to help you do that. And we've kind of flipped the other way. I think you gain
the information through that process.
Exactly.
You go and you learn algebra, you learn calculus, you learn trigonometry. It's, and people now saying, well, this is stupid. Why don't you learn it? And so you have enough schools who have removed, especially, like big public systems, statewide systems. They've removed that to the point where you don't have to go through some of these more difficult questions. And then it's fun. If you want to have a real, like, frightening time, go look up like the college entrance exams from like the 1920s.
Yes.
And you're just like, holy crap. I mean, you'd have to have master's degrees to know this stuff now, but that was expected of anybody coming out of high school.
It's amazing how many people in their like 60s and 70s are accountants and great accountants. They never went to accounting school, or they got into it later in life as a career because it was just the education they were given as part of the stand. Like, everybody was capable of being an accountant at one time, which is mind-boggling.
Well, the example I use a lot is back to my role model, my dad. He has excellent handwriting because he had to take penmanship classes as part of, I think it was elementary school or grammar school as they called it then. So he had to learn to not just how to form letters and words, but how to write in a particular style that he still does today. It's a very measured and looks very professional, but he had to learn that. And when I was in school, we had to learn typing because, and this was, the internet was there, but it was in the early 90s and we were like, yeah, whatever. Why do I have to learn typing? Well, you may need to know how to use a computer. And I know people now who work in IT who hunt and peck and have never learned to type because they don't teach that anymore. And I'm like, what the heck? So much of what people are doing these days has that same, 150-year-old QWERTY keyboard layout in front of them, unless they're using a Dvorak or something. But they have that 88 or 108 key or whatever it is keyboard in front of them that so much of your life revolves around that and a screen. And now you see even younger people who don't have that capability because they've grown up with touch screens and swiping sort of thing. So it's as technology moves, but you lose things from the past on that. So I think the education system has been manipulated dramatically just in my experience. And it's probably someone earlier than me would say the same thing. Every generation it's worse. And I don't think any of them are better. So I think it's getting worse and worse and worse as we go. And it will be worse 25 years from now. So.
Do you think that there will be an education system 25 years from now, or is it just going to be you'll be born and they just like plug a chip in your brain or something? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think about that like that Matrix idea of what's he say? I know Kung Fu when they plug him in. I mean, that's kind of cool. You think about that learning through osmosis, but yeah, if you don't have those same experiences, I mean, what's that going to make you? If you have the knowledge, but is that going to be the same sort of thing? I don't know. I mean, yeah.
Well, the education system is ready to get upended anyways. And what I find interesting, it's this idea that right now you need a lot of teachers. But if you go to a digital format, hey, I want my kid to have the best history teacher that there is in the world. All right, well, everybody can have the best history teacher there is in the world. So how many teachers do you really need? So it's going to narrow the bandwidth of
there's been talks for years about these things called MOOCs, MOOC, massive online open courses, I believe. Where you can have thousands of people in a course. I'm going to take a class on medieval art history, but I'm going to take an online one. I'm going to pay my $99 and there's 1,000 people in here. Well, you couldn't do that class in a high school or college. It's just not feasible physically to do that. And if there's a silver lining with the COVID crap this last year and a half, is that a lot of people have been kind of forced into this model of I can learn from anybody anywhere. I don't have to be in a room. Now, the downside on that is very few people actually modified their curriculum or their teaching or any of that to address that. And they tried to teach the classes the same way, just now they're teaching it over Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, I think most kids, now some actually, there are going to be some outliers out there. Some thrived in that scenario, but most kids in public schools functionally lost a year or a year and a half of school.
Yeah.
And they're not getting that back. They are now behind. It's like the kids who get held back sort of thing. It's like they're now going to be behind, and we're going to see these ramifications. These are the ripples in the pond, and they're going to get bigger and bigger as they go throughout life. And you're going to recognize people 10 years from now who, oh, you were in one of those COVID classes, so you didn't get that. But your point is valid. If the classes were developed in such a way, if the teaching and the curriculum and the pedagogy was developed in such a way to support that style of teaching, it could be done in that manner where, yes, you probably need teaching assistants in the space to assist students in the room sort of thing, but their lesson could be coming from the best history teacher in the world, because that's who's teaching the class. The most engaging, the most entertaining, the most knowledgeable person on this subject, and I can take that class. But instead you get somebody who maybe last year was teaching Spanish and now they're teaching history because that's how the certifications work. So.
Yeah, it's a trap.
What would you tell your teenage self?
I already mentioned this one. Yeah. Don't go to college. Don't do it. This will be a fun one to do. Hey, don't go to college right away. Go eventually, but don't go for what you think about. Don't go for what you think you're going to do. Don't go now. Don't go where you're thinking of going, and don't go there because of why you're thinking of doing it. As I think about, I had scholarship opportunities at a bunch of different schools. I did all right in high school. I was in the top 25%. I don't know, some high number. I don't know where the hell I was. I didn't have to work very hard in high school. So I had a lot of opportunities, but I was determined, like there was one school, like I said, I want to go to big state school because big state school had the big college experience and that's where I'm going. And I'm going to major in pre-med and I'm going to be a doctor and all. Yeah, none of that worked out. So yeah, I would tell my teenage self, do not do these things, especially for the reasons that you think you have to do them. It's an opportunity to do something a little bit different, and you are not ready to do this at age 18. As a 17-year-old, you're certainly not ready to make these decisions that are going to functionally set up your life for the next 4 years. But once you're of age and graduate from high school, do not go off to big state school to study pre-med for the reasons that you think you need to, because it ain't going to work out, and you could save yourself a lot of embarrassment and probably get some different life skills by doing some different things for a few years and then going to school for different programs.
This is why I love the idea of what Europeans do, where, before you go off to school, you go on, travel around the world, you experience things, you go out and figure out what you want.
That gap year. Yeah.
Yeah. For a year or two, you just go out and explore with no plan, just traveling and experiencing. And that makes sense because like when you're in school and you're around your parents and you're in these structures, like you're in a very narrow band of systems that are decided for you. You really haven't been able to go out there and find out what other things you might be interested in. And if you don't know, then how do you know?
Yeah. And even one step beyond that, the idea of the gap year, I like the concept. I don't like how it's done because it's out to go explore things. I like, kind of almost a lot of countries do it like the forced military service. Or if you don't do military service, the forced kind of government service, because that gives you the same, I think a lot of times the same experience of doing something else, but doing something a little more productive. And I think in the U.S. anyway, it'd be easy for them, especially now, to put together like a large government program of social programs or something where you go do that for 2 years, and then in return, you get some significant discounts off of your tuition for whatever, but hopefully you're not going to go study medieval art history because that's going to be difficult to do. If I had to put them in, if I needed to come up with a big institution to put them in, maybe back to the earlier question about what social institution would I change, I'd make all these kids work in the DMV, honestly. And I say that for a couple of reasons, somewhat jokingly, but somewhat truthfully. I think people should, so here's back to the question. I think people should have to take their driving test their written test every year. They have to take a written test every year, and they have to take a driving test like every 3 or 4 years. But that's going to mean you're going to need more people to do those tests and manage all that. So now you just created a whole bunch of jobs, and you've made the road safer. So win-win. If you think about it, if you live in the same town where you turn 16 or whatever age kids get their driver's licenses at these days, there are places that you can take your test at age 16 and never, ever, ever take another written or driving test again for the rest of your life. And yet you are still 100% licensed to drive. And yet the laws change. The laws, even in your state or your town, whatever, change on how you approach a roundabout, how far you have to be from a stoplight, how far can you park from a fire hydrant. All these things change, but you're not required to go take another driving test. So it's a bonus institution to dramatically overhaul.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you consider you're essentially driving around just, a murder machine that with, the careless act or mechanical malfunction or, the inability to control your motor function, the strength, reaction time, vision, so many things that really
or just
aren't
looking at your damn phone.
Yeah.
This is why we don't have flying cars yet.
It's probably a good thing. They would just be auguring into the ground everywhere.
Yeah.
What do you hope people will say at your funeral?
I would, and I say this in somewhat in jest, but in all seriousness, I hope there's not a funeral. And I would like people to find out that I died long after it happened. So when people, it's not going to be like eulogy and people standing around and moaning and weeping and then going to a wake or any of that shit. Don't waste my time. Don't waste their time. Cause I'm not going to their funerals either. But I would like to think of more of like I said, I'd like to leave no trace, leave the world a better place than when I found it. So it's going to be, oh yeah, you remember Cretched? Yeah. Well, yeah, he died a couple of years ago. Oh well, that's in my mind, that's the ideal funeral.
I like it. Well, Cretched, that's the end of the bonus questions and the totality of the 13 questions.
Cool. How many questions was it on the bonus? Was that 3?
3
4?
questions.
3. So it's 16 questions.
Well, it used to be, we have had episodes where you did 7 questions. So it was 21 questions for those ones.
All right.
But
Well,
yeah.
I think we did it right, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was the last episode we recorded. I ended up asking the bonus and Adam was asking the 13. I thought that was neat. So asked him to ask this time too.
Yeah, no, it worked out. And we actually, because we cycled the questions, there's a bunch of the bonus questions that are already cycled back into the regular questions. So, yeah, we've actually kind of moved to a rolling system. We don't really, at least I don't consider myself beholden in a way, anyway, to the podcast. So, I crave new questions or new perspectives or angles and ways for us to just let it grow and evolve. Because originally Darren he asked a ton of people who he thought really highly of. He said, hey, I have this idea for a podcast. Do you have any questions, really deep, meaningful questions for men that you think would be good? And that's this. So, yeah, if you have any questions or think there's anything that should be modified, changed, moved, removed, feel free to let us know.
Yeah, I'll have to keep that in mind. Like I said, if I come up with one, I have my notepad and I will write it down.
Nice.
But by the way, also, I like the little Mead notebooks because you can put the pen in here, just as an aside. So yeah, if I think of anything, I'll make a note of it, and literally I'll make a note of it. And I'll follow up with you on that. So yeah, that's cool.
Awesome. Well, make sure to, I guess give a shout out. I don't know where people, what's the best way for people to link up with you, if it's over at ODBYM or over on your socials.
Socials. Yeah. Good luck with that. I guess, I will plug, OBDM, our big dumb mouth, which is at, obdmpod.com, ourbigdumbmouth.com, which for whatever reason Mike doesn't seem to like, but it's a unique name. We stream live Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern and Saturdays at noon Eastern. There's also an audio version that releases out, but if you join us live, then there's more shenanigans going on there. It's conspiracies and paranormal and cryptids and Bigfoot. And, we try to have a lot of fun. So I'll plug that. It's not my show. I'm just there to keep things moving along. It's really Mike's show. He's been doing it for 15 years or so, almost 15 years, I guess. Like we noticed the other day, we're coming up close to episode 1000. We're gonna have to do something for that. But it's been a lot of fun, and yeah, you can find us there. If you are willing to give $1 to the Patreon, we'll put you on the Discord and come hang out with another, 200 weirdos.
It's a fun place to be, guys. Pay $1, hang out in the Discord.
Pay the $1, yeah.
And I don't know if we mentioned it earlier, but Midnight Mike was on this podcast, many episodes ago. So scroll back.
Yeah, I went back and listened to that one too. I went because you'd mentioned that hey, Mike did this. I went back and found that episode. It was like 2.5 years ago. It was way back there.
Oh yeah, it was great. That was my first exposure to you guys, and still one of my favorites.
Good. Well, like I said, this has been fun. I don't know if I followed the.
There is no wrong way.
Yeah, no,
I don't know if I followed the pattern by writing down my answers and having multiple responses to some of them, but it's the way I work. So,
thank you so much for coming on and spending your time and sharing.
We'll record a short intro after this, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Cool. All right, no, enjoyed it. Been fun.
Absolutely.
Well, I'll see you in the chats.
I'll hear you later.
You wanna Hawaii? How you wanna Hawaii? Yo what? How you wanna Hawaii? How you wanna Hawaii? Yo what? How you wanna Hawaii? How you wanna Hawaii? Yo what? How you wanna Hawaii? How you wanna Hawaii? Yo what? How you wanna Hawaii? How you wanna Hawaii? Yo what? How you wanna Hawaii? How you wanna Hawaii? Yo
Why
what?
is one man rich and another man poor? Why we ain't satisfied? Why we gotta have more? Why your suicide rates on the rest so high? Why I tell you the truth but you say don't lie? Why is being a good father at an all-time low? Why is it acceptable? Yo, why? I don't know. Why she blame him and he blame her? It's useless. Ask yourself this question. Why you making excuses? Why do parents gotta bury their kids? Why we text and drive, not caring how scary it is? Why it's so hard to forgive and leave the past behind? And if you did, then that's divine. Why don't you help your brother when you see him fall? Why do we act like God don't see it all? Why do we call them black, them white, them Asians and use labels? Now that's racism.
How you wanna Hawaii?
Why?
How you wanna Hawaii? Yo what? How you wanna Hawaii?
Why?
How you wanna Hawaii? Yo what? How you wanna Hawaii?
Why?
How you wanna Hawaii? Yo what? How you wanna Hawaii?
Why?
How you wanna Hawaii? Yo
Why is
what?
there innocent people locked up for life, while some people can't say nothing nice? Why do we always gotta question what all of it means? And why won't you follow your dreams? Tell me why. That night when you took my dad, why'd you let me see my grandpa cry? And tell me why. And why do you choose to hide, even though you was born to fly? And tell me why. And why don't we turn from all the hate? And why don't we learn from all mistakes? Why do I keep on wrecking these fat beats? And teachers don't make more than professional athletes? And why? And why? And why? And why? And why? And why?
How you wanna Hawaii?
Why?
How you wanna Hawaii? Yo what? How you wanna Hawaii?
Why?
How you wanna Hawaii? Yo what? How you wanna Hawaii? How you wanna Hawaii? Yo what? How you wanna Hawaii? How you wanna Hawaii? Yo what?
This should be considered entertainment and not therapy. We hope you benefit from our resources available at 13questionspodcast.com. Thank you for listening.